It is now 2:02, and the May 20, what is the date? The May 26, 2020 special meeting of the Durant City Council is now in session. We'll now call it to order. If you will all stand, our newspaper fellow, Mr. Clements, is going to give the invocation, followed by Vice Mayor Brittingham with the flag salute.
If it's all right, I'm sure it is. As part of my invocation, I want you to offer prayers for the families of the 40 young men. Lord God, we come to you now in the wake of the great tragedy. Keep us mindful, Lord, of the blessing that these young men were to their families and to their friends and to our community. Keep us mindful of our future as we change. But most of all, Lord, keep us mindful of the families who grieve the future. Help us to remember that nothing we do is as important as the ministry we offer to one another. And help us to find ways to minister to these things during this time of life. And Lord, I pray that as we prepare for this meeting, that you will send your spirit of peace and concord, and that we will be mindful of the fact, Lord, that though we may not agree on everything, we are here for the same objective, and that is to improve our community, to make life better for our friends and our families. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, I pray these things. Amen.
Please join me in the flag salute. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Would the clerk please call the roll?
Councilmember Shear,
Here.
Councilmember Tomlinson,
Here.
Councilmember Morris,
Here.
Vice Mayor Brittingham,
Here.
Mayor Groby.
Here we have a quorum. Our first order of business, number one, is a presentation to Street Department Superintendent James Young. If you all would join me down front.
Should we do this with a social distancing?
It don't work.
Byron, I'm unplugging. Maybe.
Anybody got a tape measure? Oh, now how are we gonna do this? How is it? Arms out. Well, we gotta have room to put James in.
Front and center.
The front center, James. Is this on? Yeah. James, you want to come up front and you want to bring Valerie? Oh, you got two children? Okay. I don't know. We've never done one of these on social distancing. The first thing I want to say is I think everybody knows James. James has been with the street department. He's been with the city of Durant 34 years. And I knew James even before I had anything to do with the city. James is one of the kindest, nicest, sweetest people that I've ever met. I've seen people give James a pretty rough time out there, and somehow he's always managed to kind of be kind to them. I don't think I've ever heard of you losing your cool but one time, James. Well, I only heard of it one time. But, and Valerie, his better half, I don't know your children, James, but Valerie's mother was a very dear friend of mine, and I've known Valerie all her life, and you couldn't have a better mate. So on behalf, and you guys couldn't have a better dad. So somebody's going to have to hold this while I read this.
Are you safe?
We have a award of appreciation presented to you, James. Congratulations on your well-deserved retirement after 34 years of outstanding service to the city of Durant and its citizens. We honor you for your commitment, dedication, and hard work. Thank you for a job well done, and we all wish the best for your retirement. City of Durant, Oklahoma. You can hang this in your camper when you go camping. And we all want to congratulate you, and I'm sure, I don't know how well the rest of you, but Jerry, I know you've known him a long time, and maybe Danny. So Jerry, if you want to say a few words, or anybody else.
Hey, James, you should go for 35.
We hate to see him.
I agree to that.
Probably the most violated child labor law. 21. But, just, can't say more. One of the most dedicated, sincere, persons I've ever known, in and out of business and out of the city. And James has always tried to do his best. He's had a good crew. His guys have always been dedicated to him. It's a good sign of a person with good leadership skills. I know we're going to miss you. Your knowledge and history with the city. I hope the city manager has your cell phone. Marty said he knows where you live. But it's been a tremendous value to the city, to your fellow employees, to the city managers that work for and with over the years. But God bless you. I just retired a little over a year ago. Valerie may be like my wife. She got me. But God bless you. You guys and your family and the best to you. Don't be a stranger.
The door's always open, James.
James, I've only known you for 3 or 4 years, but you've proven something to me that I already knew. Anybody that rides a Harley can't be all bad. I'm not going to miss you because I'll see you out on the road.
James, I've known you for quite a while, well before I come on city council, and I just, like Gary said, you're the same person you were then and you are today. I don't see you ever changing. You have one of the kindest hearts that people ever met. And I appreciate everything you've done over the years for the citizens of Durant. And wish you'd stick around a little longer. I know you're not going to, but you got an uncle to see and different things. So really enjoyed your friendship over the years and look forward to seeing you just down the block a little ways. So
And I think Danny, on the end down here.
James, congratulations. We, the city, and the citizens are going to miss you. All your experience and everything. A little bit envious. I missed that chapter on retirement. Congratulations. Thank you.
Thank you so much, James.
Well, I'm gonna steal a few words from Steve Howard. City's been good to me. Been really, raised 2 kids, got 6 grandkids, a couple ex-wives. has been good to me, and I've enjoyed being here. And I've always tried to be fair with everybody, and I hope probably that's something that everybody understands. Didn't always do exactly what I wanted to, or what needed to be done, but I tried to do everything I could to make things better. And I'm gonna miss it. I know I am. I've got tons of stuff to do, but I know kind of hard. I'm gonna miss it every day. Miss you guys. And I know y'all really got things seem to be on the right track. And manager, everybody, and I wish y'all well. And if y'all need anything, this is my town, just like it's y'all. And so we go crap. I'm gonna live here, right there on Elm Street, down the street from Vice Mayor. So anytime y'all need anything or question,
Michael, you want to get a
Picture. Our next item of business, number 2 on our agenda, consider approval of ordinance 1907, amending chapter 39 civil emergencies, section 2039-03, director power and duties. James, if y'all are leaving, would you get this, please? Sorry, John.
This ordinance to bring us in line,
How about that? Yeah, we're waiting on Byron to start and we're waiting on Byron again. I don't know. What's up, buddy? It's okay. This ordinance modifies the civil emergency section of the code. The code currently says that the emergency management director is hired by, the civil emergency management director is hired by city manager, and the salary is set by the city council. So this would allow the city manager to set the emergency management director's salary just like every other position that the city manager hires. So that's what this ordinance does.
Does anyone have any questions?
Are we in order in other positions that you appoint, or is the language?
All the other positions that the city manager appoints, the city manager sets the salary within the range that's set by the city council. So this is the only one that's specific. The
That
council
one-
sets. Yes, sir.
This was the only difference, okay.
Yes, sir. And this comes up in trying to replace James.
Well, and my question really was if, are others needing?
No, sir, this was it.
Any other questions?
Move approval of ordinance, the amendment, ordinance 1907. Does that need a section or the emergency order?
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion. We have a second. Would the clerk please record the vote?
Councilmember Shear,
Aye.
Councilmember Tomlinson.
Aye.
Councilmember Morris.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Brittingham.
Aye.
Mayor Kuby.
Aye, motion carries. We have an emergency clause to that. Do we have a motion for the emergency clause?
Motion.
Second?
Second.
We have a motion. We have a second. Would the clerk record the vote?
Councilmember Shear,
Aye.
Councilmember Tomlinson,
Aye.
Councilmember Morris,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Brittingham,
Aye.
Mayor Kuby.
Aye, motion carries. Number 3, consider approval of Resolution 2020-19, extending the declared state of emergency due to the COVID-19 pandemic until June 14th, 2020. Would you like to speak on that, Mr. City Manager?
Yes, ma'am. This would extend the declaration to June the 12th. And it still says that we continue to follow the state guidelines. So,
The 12th or the 14th?
oh, the 14th, I'm sorry.
Okay, and this is in line with the governor's, is this
Yes, ma'am.
correct? Okay.
ma'am.
Is there any discussion, any questions? Do we have a motion that we approve Resolution 2020-19, extending the declared state of emergency?
Move to approve resolution 2020-19.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion. We have a second. Would the clerk please record the vote?
Councilmember Shear,
Aye.
Councilmember Tomlinson,
Aye.
Councilmember Morris,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Brittingham,
Aye.
Mayor Groby.
Aye, motion carries. Item number 4, consider approval of Resolution 2020-15, establishing fees and schedule for the Carl Albert Swimming Pool. You again.
I'll take this. This one is one that's done annually, sets the period that the pool is open and the fee schedule. We have done something a little different and have added some hours that are open to the public as opposed to as much restricted time. So it gives public better access to the pool. So I sat down with the pool manager and all the lifeguards, and we went through the schedule, and that was one thing that everybody was concerned about, was increasing the hours available to just swim for the public. So
Does anyone have any questions?
Yeah. I did, and I couldn't do my research on the computer at home, but didn't we take action on some fees and schedule a few months ago for this?
no,
Or
sir.
is this amending any of that?
No,
It
sir.
was,
It
it
was
was
done
last
last
year,
year.
I think.
I know we did it last year, but I thought we'd
No, sir.
already, okay.
No, sir.
So this is all
For this year.
with,
Yes, sir.
okay.
I move we approve resolution 2020-15.
We
I'll
have a mo-
second.
We have a motion and a second. Would the clerk please record the vote?
Councilmember Shear,
Aye.
Councilmember Tomlinson,
Aye.
Councilmember Morris,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Brittingham,
Aye.
Mayor Groby.
Aye, motion carries. Number 5 is budget workshop. And I think that's you again, Mr. City Manager. Unless you need some backup.
I made down the road. See if Byron can get the PowerPoint. All right, well, we'll go over some generalizations, specific departmental questions. You can ask at the end of the department directors. But we'll just hit the highlights at this portion. So. Maybe. Got it? We're gonna start in the middle. That works for me. All right, next. Yeah. Go ahead. Make sure they're coming up. So as most everybody knows, our budget is based on fund, and then it's broken down into departments, and then further based on categories. Categories are specified by the state. So go ahead. So this is a trend of sales tax. We basically increased over the last 10 years at just over 3.3% growth. So go ahead. The use tax, basically the same trend. So the 1920 budget was 7.4 for sales tax and 1.6 million in use tax. The the projected budget is a little over 7.9 in sales tax and almost 1.9 million in use tax. What we have proposed the budget to be is we've been conservative, we believe, based on our history, with a 2% increase in sales tax at just over 7.5 million and flat on use tax at 1.6, which gives us a general budget based on sales and use tax of just over 1.6% increase from last year's budget. So as you can see, we're well below where we're projected to end the year, but with the unknowns, we want to be conservative in how we're projecting our revenue. So, but we think we've been conservative, but it's a good number. So we don't want to be too high. Okay. This kind of gives you the breakdown of revenue, how it comes in for the general fund. As you can see, about 60% of our revenue comes from taxes, about 28% from miscellaneous funds. So, and then the rest is just scattered, not really consistent in anything else. So this is our departmental expenditures by fund. As you can see, our highest category expenditures is the police department. And then number 2 on the list is fire. So they equal about 52% of our total expenditures in the general fund combined. So the personnel, list of personnel and how it breaks down based on expenses is pretty consistent with the other breakdown that you saw. So the utility authorities, yes, sir. Charges for services, water and sewer is basically our revenue for that, the huge part. So then we have miscellaneous services, but we're at just under 12 million is the projection. So again, this is the breakdown of expenses for DCUA. These are the fund transfers to subsidize other funds from the utility authority. As you can see, the big one there is DCUA to the general fund. These are all the fund transfers, again, just in a different format. So what the need is. DCUA, their personnel breakdown. So how it breaks down in expenses. So. Okay. The capital improvement, which is probably the biggest, one of the biggest things that we have for this year. These are some of the items that are on there by department. So.
John, is that Chevy Tahoe just the lease payments for the new ones we got
That is for 5 additional vehicles.
that we don't have yet, right?
Yes, sir. That would be for the next fiscal year.
So we're gonna lease them or try to buy them?
Combination. So the lease, we can keep them at the end, right? We do have that option. And so If they come out of capital, then they have to be kept, right? Because capital expenditures have to be depreciated. If it is a lease fully and you don't intend to keep it, that product cannot be, or that purchase cannot be depreciated. Therefore, it can't be considered a capital asset. So
The $66,000 figure on that, is that cost per vehicle? I mean, not per vehicle, but is that the total cost?
that would be the lease.
The lease cost for 5 for one? Okay.
Generally, the way that breaks down on that first year is that's the first year cost to lease those vehicles, and that includes I call it a down payment. They call it vehicle adjustment fee, and then the monthly payments for the few months that we will have obtained them by the time they get ordered, outfitted, and delivered.
Yeah.
So just the first year cost for 5, down payment plus a few months leases.
Do those lease payments start immediately on order or?
No, once we accept delivery of those vehicles after they've been ordered, delivered, upfitted, and then approved by the police department for acceptance, when we accept them, that's when it starts. So generally, we'll order them, if it's approved, we'll order July 1st. We may not get them until December, January, and that's why the figure's generally so low for that first month. We don't expect to pay monthly leases for 12 months in the fiscal year because it just takes a while. They don't have these vehicles waiting on the lot. They build them as they're ordered.
The 7 we just recently ordered, we approved those as July. And
Absolutely.
6 of them we just recently got, and the 7th one we still do not have.
Hopefully it'll be out on the street this week.
And will it take us about a year to get these other ones?
Yeah, generally 8 to 9 months.
Sorry, could you not hear me? Sorry, guys.
You're correct. Generally it's 8 to 9 months. Obviously it took a little bit longer for these last set because they had a GM shutdown during the holidays, and that always, the build time, it just prolongs it.
So are these actually, I mean, you made the comment, I thought you made a comment before about lease vehicles as opposed to capital improvements. So are these capital improvements or not?
The lease gives us the option to keep the vehicles at the end. And if that is the case, then they can be carried as a lease in a capital project. Does that make sense? So,
Right.
but if we're not going to keep them, we're just leasing them, then they have to come out of the operational budget.
We're not going to know that till the end.
So
If we're keeping them, right?
actually, I have directed the chief to identify which vehicles we're going to keep, a number of vehicles, not specific vehicles, but the number of vehicles. So if we get 7 and we keep 5, right? Maybe we don't want to identify the specific 5 that we're going to keep until we're at the end of the lease, because we don't want to keep the 2 worst ones,
Wow.
if that makes sense.
Or the wrecked ones.
Or the wrecked ones.
Right.
We may keep the wrecked one because they'll be newer by that point, right?
That's true.
As long as we total them.
I'll think of it in a second. I got another
Okay.
question for you.
Are we still allowed? Are we still allowed the 15,000 miles? Is that what the mileage is on those cars? It seems like last July, when we voted, it was 5,000 and we asked them to raise it, and they raised it to 15.
I believe, and I don't have those paperwork in front of me, but I believe the quote was an unlimited mileage for these, which was,
Those last year are the ones
no,
we're
the
getting.
ones that have been quoted. Actually, maybe it'd be on the 7 that we just got, might have been an unlimited. I'd have to look, Mayor. I don't have that paperwork in front of me. But I think the general agreement was, even though that mileage was in there, it was a 0.04%. And during our negotiations, I know it probably didn't make it to the contract, that there is no mileage restrictions. But I know the paperwork says one thing, and the seemingly agreement might say another. Sure, when it come down to it, it would be what the paperwork says. But absolutely, it's something we'll look at in the future as well.
Chief, did we find that 7th vehicle? Is it on its way here?
Oh, we never lost it. It just hadn't been built yet. And it's here. It's, like I said, it should be upfitted this month and hopefully out on the street this week. Laid eyes on it end of last week.
Good.
And that's what they've promised. The upfitter said it should be out in a couple of days, and a couple of days are here.
Thought of another question, John, that we had discussed, or you had mentioned it actually, about you call it a cyclical replacement. of
A vehicle
vehicles.
replacement
Right,
plan?
Right.
Yes, sir.
And so I was just curious, is 5, is that going to be the number that we're going with from here forward, or?
The number will probably fluctuate some. We have 49 vehicles that are used in patrol for the police department. 42 of those are with commissioned officers. We have another 7 that are with reserve officers. So 5 over 10 years, it's going to be hard to get 10 years out of a police car. So it's what, and we put ourselves in a position when we get 10, we don't need 10 every year, right? So we got to get that number smoothed out. So, but I would say 5 is not the number, sir.
It's a
So-
starting point.
It's a starting point. Yes, sir.
One other question, maybe Chief Hauser has this, I don't know if you know it. Out of the 17 that we've just replaced in the last 2-year period, I guess, how many of those did we keep? Do you know? I mean, transition to reserves or somewhere else?
Out of the 17 that we've replaced,
Yes.
we've transitioned a couple of Chargers into Public Works. I think 3 of those. We've decommissioned 2, one from a DUI crash, one from a blown engine. We have on track to take 1 Charger and sell at the auction. This time, the rest we've passed down.
That's it. Thank you.
You'll see, and most of you already know, I'm not a fan of moving worn out vehicles from the police department to other departments in the city. Those vehicles don't typically meet the needs of those departments, and they're worn out when they get there. So one of the things that you do see is you'll see some vehicles for some other departments that maybe necessarily haven't been looked at least in the recent past. So you will see the vehicles on there for other departments. So they can get vehicles that are specifically for what their needs are. This is a long list for DCUA. One of the things with the loan that was recently approved is there's $2 million in water improvements, and a lot of this is netted toward those improvements. So, and there's a lot of equipment on there too, which isn't toward the improvements, but things that we need. So. There's also a truck on there for the airport authority. Again, they have one of those old worn out vehicles that I think it came out of the salvage yard, one of them off 9th Street maybe. Anyway, doesn't present a very good appearance, and it only runs about half the time. So.
Just wondering, what kind of car do you get as a courtesy car for $15,000?
We're looking at a used vehicle, a good used vehicle. I mean, for something that is used as a courtesy car, we don't need a new vehicle. Yes, sir. And probably one of the things on here that is key is the emergency management, the EOC building construction. We got a lot of money to build that building, and there was a portion of it that we were committed to complete, and we have not. And so we need to go ahead and finish that building. So
James, you're gonna get that building finished. It sure has.
And then, I don't know, nobody in the community probably cares about streets, but there's still about $11 million there in street improvements we have for next year planned. So.
Can I ask one question?
ma'am.
I noticed under the remodel current facility and new facility, it's 20,000 for the animal shelter.
Yes, ma'am.
I thought we had 30,000 last year built into the budget.
We had,
Do we
I believe it
still?
was 40,000 the year before, 40,000
Total
this
80.
year. And then,
So we're gonna use all this?
yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
We're gonna make it look pretty, aren't we?
As pretty as we can for an animal shelter at the landfill.
It looks like something you'd see in Kenya or something, the way with all the stuff hanging up. Anyway, thank you for that.
Yes, ma'am. And these are really the items for the water plant. The last list was equipment. This is all improvements that are calculated in the loan, that $2 million. So
And this list is not all inclusive, is it? I mean, I just noticed that in the actual budget as opposed to this, you're forgetting new service pistols, right? Are we still getting those?
this is
PD?
capital.
Are they
So,
not considered capital?
so you have to be a certain dollar amount per item to be considered capital, to be depreciated. And I believe that's $2,500. So unless that specific item is not $2,500, it can't be considered
I
capital
thought it was 40-something thousand,
for
but you're talking
one
about per item. though.
per item. Yes, sir.
Okay,
Not a
all right,
group
not
of items, but
included.
each
Okay,
item,
not
because
combined.
each item has to be depreciated.
Gotcha.
Probably on this, the key item is the senior center. We met with Shane Knight, the architect, last week, and we hope to have that project bid in June. So, and he's confident we can finish by the end of the year. So. AMR is probably the most key item on this that's still an ongoing project. These are other funds that we deal with as a city, minor funds, I guess I would say. All right.
Yes.
Questions?
Just probably some are maybe just my math or bad math, but back on that employee number of employee screen, the number was 166. Is that everybody?
No, sir. That 160,
It was separated
it
out.
was
One of
separated
the
into,
early screens, where you had the departments and then the employee number was, I
It
was
would've
trying to
been-
figure if that was all departments or,
there was separate. DCUA was separated from the general fund. So,
so 166 was in
would be
the
the
balance.
general fund. So
59.
59 was
And
DCUA.
kind of a, just a question to ponder. Are we still, I kind of fluctuate on it a bit. Are we still pretty confident, we think, in the 2% sales tax increase?
Yes, sir. We are. So, I mean, I think history shows
Yeah.
that 2% is good. And like I said, we're actually at 1.6 is what we've actually factored in, counting the use tax. So I think we've been real conservative. So,
Okay. On the, there was a slide that had the funding to the DCUA funding to different departments.
yes, sir.
And can you go to that, Brian? Oh, don't close it yet.
We'll take a recess.
Well, anyway, the revenue of the, like the airport authority and the expenses and then the difference was
What was
255 or something, but our transfer was going to only be 155. I think it's after that one. No, actually, it's going to be prior to that. Sorry.
Up, go up.
Oh, okay, that's it. The, the shortfall is 255, I think. Now, the screen prior to that, I think, shows the transfer. Anyway, it was like 155, and it may have been all the others were, the transfers were what that revenue and expense difference was as far as the transfer, other than that one
Go.
was
Go up one.
see, it's
Okay, what if
155.
it's 243? Like, go back down to the next one.
And the difference was 255 something.
That's what I was trying to find again.
But the amount of transfer to the others was
Was the
what those
same.
numbers show.
All the money to the general fund and general fund transfer to the other fund. That's why it's a difference. The way I did for the transfer is we transfer all the money to the general fund and general fund transfer to the airport authority, transfer to the other fund. That's why there's a difference.
Why there's a difference in need from DCUA
Yes,
to
we
the
transferred-
airport.
Yes, we transferred, in the past, I think it's from DCUA directly to the airport fund. But this time I did all the DCUA to the general fund first. And then general fund to the
Right.
To each of
101.
the,
I think I got you there, but it's like the utilities authority funding transfers lined up pretty
That
much
is
with
4.7.
all of the additional funding required, other than the one on
Except
the
that one.
airport.
This one is the one that, this one plus this one plus this one plus this one plus this one.
Mhm.
Yes. That makes sense.
All right.
I mean, my question, I guess, why is that not the same
Why
as
is it not the same
like
as
the others?
Well, why is that the same as last year?
No, why isn't this number the same as,
The operating fund difference
Which one? The-
or additional
Oh,
funding
okay.
required
this one?
on most of all of those other than airport
It's the
is what
same.
we're
Okay.
transferring.
The
to those.
DCUA, they got two transfer. One is for the operating transfer. One is for the airport
Loan.
terminal.
The
That
loan.
debt service loan, yes.
That's right.
The loan is about 150, I'm not sure. There's a two transfer. One is loan transfer, one is for the support of these airport authorities operating. Remember that, the 2009 B?
Okay, let me ask it another way for me. With the additional funding required, that's what we're transferring to those. The 911, multi-sports, cemetery, general. But on the airport, it's 155. So
Okay.
what's making up the other 100,000?
That 255,000, including your loan payment.
Okay, that's it.
So the
Okay.
155 is operational.
Okay,
Yes, uh-huh.
okay, all right, okay. Thank you,
Okay.
Ann and John. I got two more questions.
Yes, sir.
One where it showed the revenue from the sales taxes.
Mhm.
And the economic development quarter cent. And then the sports complex and the arena quarter cents. The economic development showed $1 million and something. And the other quarters
Showed
showed
less.
943, yeah.
I believe the economic development sales tax gets use tax as well, whereas the other two do not.
The school does, we know, I'm not sure. The school does, I know.
That's right.
You see the economic, that Fund 110, that is expense, not the revenue when I put it down. It's expense.
The 1
The
million?
rent, yes, the 110.
Now, the 1/4 on the economic development.
Yes, yes.
Can you find that slide, Brian?
Where is it? I think it's taken-
Was it back? Before that?
Where is it?
This one,
This one, yes. Where is it? The
right
110.
there.
This one is in, this one, this page is for the expense, not the revenue. The revenue will be the same, but economic development,
No, I hope it's not $1 million expense.
is it why these two are not the same as this?
Yeah,
one? Because they said they have this, interest revenue. They got few $1 million in our pool cash account. So we have to allocate their interest revenue to this fund, and they can use the money for
So
their
that's
expense.
the 1/4 cent
is interest.
on the sports
That is
complex in the
1/4
arena
Plus the interest.
Okay.
don't include interest. Is that what we're saying?
No, okay, this one is each.
I can't tell which one that is.
Page,
I don't have it.
It's the next to last page. There you go.
this one is each fund's expense. You can see that. one.
Okay, but that's not the one. Oh, wait, okay.
Yes,
It is.
and the quarter cent of economic development, that is a fund. That's including the quarter cent of sales revenue and their interest earned for that year.
Okay.
And then they can spend it.
And that, so this is just straight sales tax.
Yes, yes.
You see why?
Because those you have to transfer out. But economic development, they can use their money. So that is their expense amount they can use. But the other quarter cent, you just transfer it to the DCFA for the payment. Or,
Right.
So
No.
it has to be the same
Yeah.
as the revenue and the expense, send out the same amount.
I think I got that one.
I'm glad you do.
And we'll probably talk about it later, but the compensation consideration at a later date, that's figured into the budget at a later date? Is that
It will be figured in at a later date. We have done some things at this time to, within the boundaries of the 2015 compensation plan or pay plan, I believe it was called at that point, to raise those positions that we had high turnover with, the dispatchers and the drivers. And so we've moved them to a higher range. So that was within my authority to do. And so we've made that happen this fiscal year. So, and we think that's helped at least on recruiting. So in the dispatcher side, I'm pretty sure. So I think he's preoccupied, but so the,
well, and
no, on the, what we've done with the dispatcher's pay, has that helped? At least recruiting wise at this point?
I think yes, because we had more that was interested, but it was within such a quick period that it was adjusted and we was already accepting applications. We will know as we're continuing to accept applications, probably with our next hiring process. It's really too early to determine right now. The bottom line is it's going to help, definitely.
well, I mean, we know that.
Absolutely. And I say that just by prefacing it with this. The three that we offered positions to this time were excited that was going to be in place because they thought they were coming in at such a lower rate. And you could see the excitement and the gleam in their eyes when they were told this is the rate now. Absolutely. It just helped. You could see it in their attitude and their entire demeanor during the hiring process and especially the conditional offer.
That's all I have right now.
Thanks, sir.
I wanted to ask just a couple of things.
Yes, ma'am.
It sure looks like we're having to transfer a lot to the 911. And it looks like it's going up every year. Are we ever going to get anything done about that? Or,
That is a goal. I have asked multiple times on different mediums how we can, if anybody's going to want to come to the table, whoever's elected. But that is a goal of mine, is to get that fixed. So we
Uh,
have to. I mean, we can't keep subsidizing 911 service for the county. And I know part of the position is there's a tax, but we all know that taxes don't necessarily pay for all the services that get provided. So, yes, ma'am, that it is on my list. You know that. So,
yeah, I think the only meeting I ever went to, James, you were there, and I guess the chief was there. And and that's been 3 years ago. And from what I understood at that meeting, the contract was like 8 to 10 years old. We can't even get together enough
to renew a contract.
is that correct? Okay. So we could put that as one of our goals. And
Yes,
I
ma'am.
wanted to also ask, like on the airport, once we get this fuel tank, will that offset this and the money that we're having to supplement? Because at one time we were making quite a bit of money off of the,
We hope that we'll sell enough fuel to be able to pay for the tank. I mean, we're looking at about $250,000 project is what we're looking at. So at this point, it won't offset what we're compensating, what we're transferring from DCUA to make the airport
okay, is that
solid.
the one we're still thinking about from New Jersey? Or are we going to be?
We're going to have to go, that tank is not going to meet the specifications. So we're going to have to go to bid. And the engineers Lochner is working on that.
Okay.
So
I
I
think-
guess on that same subject, if we're going to have to go to bid, which is going to drag this out longer, are we still looking at possibly using a truck?
We are.
Okay.
Yes, sir. And we are looking at using a truck through Shell, which is the only one that will bring it on. We'll have to rebrand all of our fuel. And to do that, there's certain things that have to be done to our current site for Shell to give us fuel in our current tank. So talking about Jet A. And to do truck to truck, there's certain things that have to be in place. And we're working on those things to actually get the truck. I mean, Shell is a big company and they're not going to do anything that's going to put themselves at risk. So we have to meet all of their standards before we can get the truck on site. So it's not just as easy as let's go buy a truck and put fuel in it and sell it. I wish it was, but it's not that simple. So
I guess I'm a little confused. Is it just a matter of money? I mean, there are other airports that have Jet A. Are we any different than Grayson or anybody else that's got it? It seems like this has gone on forever, and I don't understand.
I don't know that we're any different than any of our surrounding airports.
We don't
I
have
can't-
fuel. That's all
Well,
it
we
is.
have Jet A. We don't have 100 low lead is what we don't have at this time. Yes, sir. But to get the truck, which is the short-term fix, there's things that we have to do to our existing facility. I can't tell you who's delivering their fuel and what their standards are. But like I said, Shell is the only company that will give us a truck that we can fuel, that'll fuel truck to truck. So, I mean, we're kind of over a barrel. So
Are we talking Jet A or are we back to ULL?
low lead. Yes, sir. Jet A there's nothing wrong with our Jet A, except we have to bring some of the things that are there up to standards so that Shell will deliver fuel to us in our tanks. So
Is that in our budget? I mean, or is that happening as we speak?
we're going to have to figure it out as we go. Yes, sir. So
What's the estimated time to get bids and get a tank installed? No, that
you may have a better update than I do.
Yeah, on the,
Shell would be our fuel provider. It'd be a 1-year contract. They would provide both 100 low lead and Jet A. For them to fuel us in our existing Jet A tank, we have to move the emergency stop button. We have to recolor some of the handles that have faded away. We have to relabel it. Most of it is minor things that we have to do to bring the Jet A tank that's there now up to Shell standards, since we're going to be buying fuel from them for both 100 low lead and the Jet A as well. The truck, we also have to have a waiver from the fire department that we meet certain standards, because fueling from a transport truck to a truck at the airport has a lot of risk to it because of the volatility of the fuel. So we have to meet these certain standards for them to be able to transfer that over. We will have to have a little bit of additional training, which we can get online. We'll have to have a safety harness, and we have to have a certain type of fire extinguisher, which we do have. So we're in the process of getting to it. And then to answer the question about the tank from Ohio, which one of you had it, that tank would not meet the OCC guidelines, which was unfortunate. What we're finding out is the Oklahoma Corporation Commission has a lot more stringent guidelines than most states around us. So therefore, we have to have something that will meet their guidelines to get it permitted. And that would allow us to sell the fuel. So hopefully that helps some to answer those questions. Most of the changes we're having to do are fairly minor. It just takes a while to get them done. So.
Do you have an estimated time? for
30 to 60 days on the truck,
On the truck, what about getting the tank, getting the
4 to
system?
6 months.
6 months.
Yes,
That takes care of the bid process and building. and
that is
everything.
correct. That is correct. That's from Lochner, we hired them as an engineering firm because they are familiar with what's required to meet those OCC guidelines, to engineer the ground where that truck or where that tank's going to go. When you look at 10 to 12,000 gallon tanks full of fuel, that's a lot of weight. So we got to make sure the concrete base and the subsoil can withstand that weight. So that's what we're looking at. You're welcome.
Thank you, Mr. James.
You're very welcome.
Anybody else have any questions or comments? John, I'd like to say that I think you and your team did a great job putting this together. I thought it was for somebody like me, I really enjoyed the first few pages in the book. I thought that was very well done. And Ann, I want to compliment you because I know you had a lot to do with it, and probably other people here too.
Yes,
So
ma'am.
I'd say I love you, but I think that it was a good job done. And just looking at everything, it looks like a fairly conservative budget.
We think so.
It seems to be, especially when based on what you said, that our taxes have been a little over 3%. We're only budgeting for 2%. So we are kind of taking into consideration, we don't really know what's going to happen yet.
Right.
So, and I don't know how the rest of you feel, and we may have some more questions before we have our meeting, the next meeting. And if we do, I guess we can write them. Steve, do you have any?
I do have a couple of questions.
Okay.
On page 2 of the actual budget.
Okay.
Down here at the bottom, the water and sewer line maintenance, you can probably answer it. It says 3 meter readers have been funded. Is it saying that this is not 3 new meters, is this because there's moved from another department?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I just want to clarify that.
Yeah, they used to be in utility billing and now they're
Right.
under M&O.
Okay, and because I noticed some of the other ones, it says when the position been funded, such as, I think, Roger, a secretary, if I'm
Correct.
not mistaken, and
That's
then the
correct.
grant assistant writer.
That's correct.
Just wanted, I figured that was the case. Just wanted to
Yep.
confirm. And then the only other question I had was on the police department salaries. That was a pretty substantial increase. And I'm just wondering if you could clarify why. I mean, because I thought the percent was pretty low.
The only increase is based on the collective bargaining agreement, which has their step increase. And that's the only increase that's accounted for in theirs. So
And it's $364,000.
that's correct.
Okay. What was the percent? Was there a percent or
I don't remember what the percent
was
is.
it just a step?
Yes, sir.
Okay, there's not a percent associated with the steps.
It is, but I don't remember what it is. 2.5. That's what I was going to say, but I knew I'd be wrong if I did. So,
2.5.
yes, sir.
How many officers?
42. That's correct. I forget about that, David.
Does that include the one with, that we get a grant for, that you, or partial grant, started out, you got a full grant for the statistics person?
Right.
Yeah, because 2.5%, even if you took an average salary for the 40 of 75,000 is only $75,000. So, I mean, that's a big difference, but if you start adding in another 2.5.
Right.
And then 2.5, and
Right.
you can see how you get there real quick.
Compounds. Yes, sir.
Councilmember Sure, I think what you're referring to is the criminal analyst. That's a
Yeah.
civilian position. It's not included in the bargaining agreement.
Okay.
He's the one that we hired full-time, I think. It was approved for $20,000 a year, and we agreed to hire him full-time. Is that the one we're talking about?
That is correct. He is a full-time employee. Initially, it was fully funded, and over the years, now we're down to the 20,000 grant, and it's not a yearly, it's a yearly opportunity, but no guarantees.
That's for the grant, right, David?
Yeah, I think they started out, as he said, fully funding it, and then it dropped. I know last year it was 20,000, and we put the difference with it to hire him, make him full-time or pay him, right? Okay. Any more questions, anybody?
I just got a comment to follow up on what the mayor said. This document you gave us, that was very easy to read, very well thought out. I really like this document more than any I've seen describing a budget. So thank you for your team for putting this together. It's a really good job.
Thank you. They do a good job. We got some good folks.
I don't know who all was responsible, but I know Ann Chin, she's so modest, she would never accept any praise, but thank you, Ann.
She's smiling behind that mask.
Yeah.
Yes, she is.
Well, I think I'll just echo those comments too. Probably the biggest challenge, one of the biggest challenges anyway, that the city manager and Ms. Ann Chin and finance department and department heads, for that matter, on an annual basis, look at is that budget. And that's probably at the minimum of almost, it's not an all year round endeavor, but it's a good 6-month endeavor. And our compliments to all involved. That's every year they've brought a a budget that could be approved and considered and approved, and good job again.
Thanks, sir.
Okay. If there are no other questions, I guess we can ask for a motion for adjournment. Go ahead.
Mayor, you had asked a question earlier about the mileage. I looked that up on our past contracts, and it is 15,000 mile limit, estimated on a 15,000 mile limit.
That's what I thought, because I thought it was 5 and we had requested that it go up to 15,000. Thank you for that. Do I hear a motion for adjournment?
Motion to adjourn.
Second?
I'll second.
Have a motion and a second. Would the clerk please record the vote?
Councilmember Shear,
Aye.
Councilmember Tomlinson, Councilmember Morris,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Brittingham,
Aye.
Mayor Groby.
Aye, we are now adjourned. Thank you all for attending today in our new social distancing. Danny, did your daughter know?